So a few months ago, I did a build with the Ryzen 3900X in the Be Quiet case, the 900, the biggest version. How did it hold up after a few months of use? Let's get into it.
I've been waiting all my life for someone like you. I would watch the days go by, wasted in blue. I was out of use. Now every day, every night, every moment with you, I'm walking on air. And every day, every way, I feel I can't lose. I wanna shout it out, ain't no limit. I wanna shout it out to the world. You got me all worked up, got me spinning. I'm crazy for love, crazy for love, crazy for love, crazy for love. Crazy for love.
Hey guys, Tiago here with Classical Technology. Thank you for joining me for another video. Please remember to subscribe, leave a comment below. I want to know if you guys have used the Be Quiet case or even any of the newer AMD processors and what you thought of it. Remember to subscribe, smash that like button, and let's get into the video. So the Ryzen 3900X, when it came out, this CPU just created a whole uproar. For the last few generations of Ryzen, they've been slowly encroaching on Intel space. Before, if you got an Intel like Extreme Edition processor, like maybe the 6950X, they were really expensive, but they were still fairly respected in the market because there was nothing around like that. That used to be a 10-core processor, and it was almost a $10,000 processor. And even up to the point where the Intel 18-core processors came out, such as the 7980XE, it was around right at that time that AMD started introducing their Threadrippers, and then the 3900X came along and it really blew everything out of the water, because not only was it a 12-core $500 CPU, it also performed really well not only in games as well as in content creation, which both of these categories Intel used to dominate. And then recently Intel was still on the gaming side. That's sort of the last thing that they held on to with the 9900K. But with the new Ryzen processors coming out, they're really stealing away any of that thunder in terms of gaming, not even to mention multi-core content creation, which they're just blowing them out of the water at this point. So back when the Ryzen 3900X came out, it was a little bit difficult to get a hold of this CPU as soon as it came out. On Newegg it popped up, and Micro Center. You really had to be watching and be lucky for maybe like 5 minutes so you can snatch one of these CPUs up. But I was lucky enough to be able to get one in the beginning. And of course, in the first month, as they're still updating their BIOS and different things of that nature, you are going to have some issues. I did run into a couple little funny things, but it's to be expected. It was a very new platform. The motherboard that I decided to do in this build is the MSI X570 Godlike motherboard. Now, this motherboard is total overkill, but years ago I had an X99 Godlike motherboard and I thought they were absolutely fantastic. Now, would I buy this motherboard again? I mean, it's over $700, so I don't think I would. If I could go back and change, maybe I would have gotten one for like half the price, like the MSI Meg Ace or something like that, that's significantly cheaper, and I don't really think I would notice a difference every day. Now, it's cool having the Godlike motherboard, and it is full of features. You have your little M.2 card. You have a lot of stuff you can put in it. It looks pretty cool, but I really don't think it's worth the price premium versus some of the mid-range boards, or even you can call them high-end boards as well. This one's just sort of like a god tier, no pun intended, MSI Godlike. With everything else, I've been pretty happy. On this build, I'm using the new Trident Z Neo at 3600 megahertz. Supposedly, this RAM is optimized for Ryzen, with the timings, and 3600 megahertz seems to be sort of that sweet spot for RAM for this platform. I didn't want to go any higher or any lower. I wanted to keep it right at this number, and performance has been pretty good. Now, in terms of BIOS updates, MSI has been okay with it. I mean, some of the things really took a while to get updated. updated. You know, there have been numerous updates coming out that help boot time and things of that nature. I also have a Gigabyte Master motherboard, which is a much cheaper motherboard. There, the BIOS updates seem to come a little bit faster and more frequently, but not by much. And now I really did like building in this case, and the inverted motherboard is awesome. It hasn't really presented any issues in terms of having to swap hardware in and out. Like, I took the sound card out without a problem. Everything's still very accessible. It's basically like working on a regular water-cooled build, so there are no added difficulties, which is really good. And I am really glad I didn't try to do a vertical GPU. I had really considered it because I thought a vertical GPU would look sick in this case, and aesthetically it would look really cool. But I stayed with that horizontal GPU because, first of all, it still looks pretty cool because it's upside down, so you can see that bottom liquid part when it's facing up, especially the way this case is. If you're kind of looking down at it, you can definitely see it. So aesthetically, it's still pretty cool. But the main factor why I didn't want to vertically mount the GPU, if you do, you're hiding that expensive motherboard. Like, you're not even going to be able to see it. Not only that, you're not going to be able to access any of the PCIe connections on the motherboard without draining the loop and moving the GPU out of the way. So while aesthetically it really would have looked awesome to have that GPU just hanging in there, I decided against it because practically it was going to be impossible to put in, you know, a PCIe sound card or even like an Intel 900p, you know, hard drive or something like that if I ever decided to do so in the future. Not to mention the M.2 PCIe card the motherboard comes with. So I think it would have wasted the motherboard doing a vertical GPU. One little action like that kind of just, you know, it hides it visually and it keeps you from using some of the performance accessories that this motherboard came with. Now, in terms of cooling performance, I mean, it has been very good, but I do have a large amount of radiator space in here. On the roof, there's a 420, 280 on the front, and on the bottom I have a 240. Now, if this case had really open airflow, I think my thermals would be considerably better. They're not bad, and the noise profile is really good, as this case is called Be Quiet after all. But I did find that my Cooler Master H500M, which is wide open with 200mm fans on the front with plenty of airflow, even without any type of sound deadening material, that case seems to operate quieter at a better thermal performance. Now, this is just what happens when you take a lot of panels and you put it in front of fans. You're not going to get the same airflow, and while you may get more silence, if you have to ramp those fans up to make up for that performance, you know, that silence kind of goes away and you're just stuck with sort of okay thermals. But in terms of this build, there's really not much you could do about that. I did put some of the best fans that I could in here. We have the Silent Wings 3, you know, both the 140mm versions as well as the 120mm versions. So, I mean, these fans are really good. They have great static pressure. They perform very well at low noise. So I don't think I would have gained anything from putting like Noctua fans or NBE loops or anything like that. And of course, the Be Quiet fans are going to match the build, so aesthetically everything's a cohesive package. I did use the Corsair D5 pump and reservoir combo, and I have no issues to report. It's been working flawlessly. The liquid has really stayed in there. I've had no leaks or any issues like that. It's pretty quiet. I can lower the RPM on the pump, so it's really, really silent. So I haven't had any issues in terms of the performance of this D5 pump. So I'm really glad I went with this one. I did have a couple of other ones I could have put in there that I think would have done just as well, like Singularity Computers Reservoir, EKWB Water Blocks, even bitspower. They all would have done pretty much the same thing. But this was one of my first attempts at using the new Corsair water cooling products that were just released at the time. So I'm glad I went with it. I think it's been looking really cool, and I've had no issues with it at all. And the design of it kind of matches sort of the angular design of this case. So I'm pretty happy with that aesthetic. Now the coolant, this is the EK solid coolant, which is like the pastel sort of coolant. I've had no issues with it. It's been working perfectly. And I think that this liquid really looks sick. Like, there's very little on the market that looks like this. It's a very nice, rich color. So I don't regret anything there. Very happy with the choice there. From the time I originally built this case, I had a Corsair GPU water block on the 2080 Super, but I decided to switch that out and put in just a regular 2080 with the EK water blocks, just because I thought the thermals were a little warm on that Corsair block, so I wasn't sure if it was the case or the block itself. After switching it out, I kind of figured out because of the restricted airflow in this case, that's really one of the primary reasons that maybe I'll get a little less performance than I'm used to compared to a wide open case. case, but in general, it's still excellent performance. We're talking about in like the 40C range under load during games, so it's not like it's going up really high or anything like that. And this is a pretty big case, but it's not like ridiculously big. It is really cool that on top of the case that there's a little like Qi charging pad. You can put your phone there. I think that's a really awesome touch and like a little gimmick you can show to people, but like no other case really has that. So that's pretty amazing. In general, the case is heavy. It's hard to move, but that's expected for a case of this size, but it's not like extremely heavy by any means. Some cases like the Corsair 900D, which I loved building in, just seemed impossibly heavy after you have water cooling in there. It's almost like you have to get a crane to move that bad boy. But now this case is more manageable to move, and I really day by day I grew to really like the design even more. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a comment down below if you guys have ever used a case like this or what you think of this build. Remember to subscribe, smash that like button, and I'll see you guys on the next video.